The ABCs of horror.
Welcome to the HellBound Horror Show. Tonight, we're using our good friend, the Necronomicon, to look at the letter H. 1985's House. With a tagline as epic as "Ding dong, you're dead," you know you're in for an interesting treat. And 1985's House was produced by Sean Cunningham of Friday the 13th fame and was actually directed by Steve Miner, who made some okay horror films such as Friday the 13th Part 2 and 3, as well as Halloween H2O. House isn't that amazing on paper, and honestly, it's a little confusing to explain. House stars Roger Cobb, who is this famous horror author. His aunt hangs herself in the house that Roger grew up in. Roger is working on his next book, but is having writer's block about a true Vietnam War experience that he had. So he decides to live in his aunt's house to get the creative juices flowing. We find out that Roger is divorced and he had a son. And that son apparently went missing in this very house. Now, it's not clear whether or not Roger and his family were living in the house at the time of his son's disappearance, or if they were just visiting. We see flashbacks of Roger and his family inside the house, but it's confusing because Roger always refers to the house as his aunt's. Anyways, weird stuff starts happening, and guess what? It's haunted. Because, of course, it's a horror movie. The plot makes no sense at all. Clearly, there are some bad things happening in this house, but Roger is somehow skeptical that the house is even haunted. I mean, his kid went missing in the house, and his aunt's been telling him that the house has been haunted for years.
Mr. Cobb, we've got an APB out on your son. We'll let you know as soon as we have some.
It was the house. It was the house that did it.
Then you remember, Roger used to live here. How is he not aware of the haunting? Is it just some kind of new haunting that only sprung up after his aunt died?
This house knows everything about you. Leave while you can.
No!
No, because his kid went missing years ago. The plot is so inconsistent, and that's definitely one of the weakest parts of the movie. However, one of the strongest parts of the movie is its imagination. There were some really cool ideas, and I liked how some wild the scenes were. It wasn't gripped in reality, and it almost felt like the people who worked on the movie just threw in some cool ideas to have a wild and crazy adventure. The imagination may have hindered the storytelling a bit, but I think it was best for the final product. It led for a more memorable film.
Don't worry, Roger. I'll hold on to you if it's the last thing I do.
House is an interesting film that tries to mix horror and comedy, but often fails at both. It's not a particularly good film, and some would even argue that it's a bad film. However, it's not so bad that it's good. It's just this awkward in-between, and it often falls flat. Feels a little sloppily put together, and a little awkward. Sort of like this. Some horror elements completely missed their cues, and the comedy felt like a stretch at times. A lot of what happened on the screen felt like a terrible mix of horror and comedy. It almost hit this uncanny valley between the two genres and often left me scratching my head or shaking it in confusion. Like this swordfish coming alive and flopping on the wall. Is that supposed to be scary? Or is it supposed to make me laugh? Because when I watched it, it did nothing for me. I was just confused by the execution. In many ways, the scene in The Evil Dead 2 is similar to this. Let me compare. We're in The Evil Dead 2, and suddenly the deer bust on the wall comes alive. Already the design of the deer is a tad off-putting, but it's creepy with its soulless eyes. All of a sudden, an absurd laugh comes out. It's a comical scene where everything in the room begins to take a life of its own and begins to laugh. And even though it's played for straight laughs, the performance of Bruce Campbell and the camera work of Sam Raimi merge the scene into something that is both comical and creepy. A perfect blend of that sweet, dark comedy. Also, notice that there isn't a musical score here. We just get the ever-growing laughter. Music usually sets the mood for a scene, and with the absence of the music, the audience sort of has to set their own mood for the scene. Some may find it creepier this way, and others may find it more comical. The important part is that the music isn't playing an upbeat comical score, but it's also not playing a suspenseful horror score. The audience decides. Now let's take a look at House. Again, we start with another character that could be viewed as mentally unstable. The swordfish on the wall's eyes begin to move and follow the character. You'll notice that the score is playing an eerily high pitch with light melody strung throughout, giving off a creepy vibe. Suddenly, the fish flops on the wall as if it's come to life, and the music blasts in. And this is where I'm a little torn. The music has some rhythmicalness to it, but it also has the deep brass that rises in scale to build tension and horror. It tries to play comedy and horror just like The Evil Dead, but to me comes across as hokey. The constant flailing of the fish isn't threatening, nor is it over the top enough to garnish a laugh. The whole film sort of has this awkwardness to it, but there are some really great parts to it. My favorite character is Harold, and Harold's played by the dude from Cheers. Harold is hilarious. Just check this out.
Hey, it's great to have a new neighbor. Woman lived here before you was nuts. Biggest bitch under the sun. Just a senile old hag, really. Wouldn't be surprised if someone just got fed up and offed her, you know what I mean?
She was my aunt.
Heart of gold, though. Just a saint, really. And such a beautiful woman for her age.
It's played off really well, and I love that dry delivery. And this next scene is probably my favorite line in the whole film.
Do you believe in ghosts?
Well, what kind of ghosts?
What? What kind of ghost? Yeah, that's how I'm going to answer that from now on. Do you believe in ghosts? What kind of ghost? I believe in ghost dogs. I believe in ghost horses, ghost carrots. But ghost peppers? Yeah, ghost peppers are made up, and I don't believe in that. What kind of answer is that? What kind of ghost? I don't even think it was supposed to be funny, but I absolutely adore it. There's also some really decent practical effects. Nothing out of this world, but it was nice to see how imaginative some of the designs were. All in all, the best thing that I can say about House is that it isn't boring. Whether you're making fun of it or you're watching it for the spectacle, you will be entertained. It's not the greatest, but it's not the worst. And that's all I got. That's all I have to say. How's that for an ending?